Welcome to Intrepid. Thank you for purchasing this guide. Today we are doing a masterclass on how to fill out a winning cost volume for an STTR proposal. We will walk you through all the information you need, including how to calculate hours and rates without getting disqualified, and common mistakes those new to STTR and government contracting make so you don't get stuck. The cost volume is what most people would call the budget, and it's a line-by-line breakdown of all the labor hours, materials, supplies, equipment, travel, profit, overhead, research partner, and subcontractors you are proposing to get the scope of work done. This budget information is submitted on DSIP for Department of Defense proposals and ProSAMS for NASA. Other agencies will have their own portals, but the requirements are all fairly similar. For the DoD, the budget information is called Volume 3, and unfortunately I can't screen share directly in DSIP, so I'm using this publicly available guide instead. This guide is also linked in our download package. If you complete the fields on our Volume 3 Excel calculator, you will have everything you need and more to go into DSIP. The sheet is also shareable, making it easier to collaborate with others in your startup, research partners, consultants, and subcontractors. Getting into the guide, we have 7 tabs. Make sure you read all the Getting Started notes here on the first tab. Information on tabs 2 through 6 auto-populate cells on tab 7, so if possible, go through these from left to right. Moving on to the question tab. Before you enter any cost information, you will be asked a series of questions that determine what fields you have available in the rest of the cost volume. Let's go through those. First, select what additional costs you have, if any. The options include subcontractors, materials, supplies, equipment, travel, TABA, and other. The Air Force doesn't offer TABA, so if you're doing an Air Force proposal, that option will be grayed out. Next, you have to decide if you want to be paid in monthly progress payments or on a milestone schedule that you set. If you want a steady payment schedule, select monthly payment. If you are delivering bigger deliverables up front or have varying costs over the period of performance, select milestones. Phase 1 proposals may not give you this option, so if you don't see this question in DSIP, don't worry. It just means you will be paid on a predetermined schedule, which is usually something like 50% at kickoff and 50% at contract closeout. Next, enter your overhead if your company has an established overhead cost or rate. If you don't have this established, we recommend using fully burdened rates. Fully burdened rates are the contractor version of lump sum fixed cost. You're telling the evaluator that the rates provided are the total cost of paying the worker beyond base salary or wages without providing a breakdown. If you use fully burdened rates, set overhead to 0. Select whether you want this applied to travel. If you are using fully burdened rates, say no. Moving on to the G&A. If known, enter that here. If your company doesn't have a G&A rate established, set this to 0 and answer no to the remaining questions. Next is cost sharing and profit. Most companies will not have a cost sharing requirement, so set this to 0. If you are proposing a joint venture or have cost sharing information, enter that here. For profit, we default set the profit rate to 8% in our guides. Federal agencies do not like to award to companies that don't have a profit margin because they aren't likely to succeed long term. On the flip side, they don't want to make an award to a company that has a hefty profit margin because from their perspective, it isn't a good use of taxpayer money. Acceptable profit margins are 5 to 10%, so if possible, budget that in, but regardless, answer this accurately. Moving on to tab 3, labor. This is where you provide details for all the people working on the contract. For key personnel, you need to provide their role and full name. For non-key personnel, you only need to provide the role. If the key personnel changes between the time that you submit the proposal and contract award and execution, you will have to justify with your contracting officer to put someone else on the project. So make sure whoever you list here is unlikely to change. DSIP will also make you select a labor category. The ones shown here are all the options you will have available in DSIP, so select the one that is the closest fit. You also need to provide years of experience, education level, and if there is a fringe rate. Again, if you don't have established fringe rates, just use fully burdened rates and set fringe to 0. The names and roles here will auto-populate cells on subsequent tabs, so if you need to make edits, make sure you come back here. For your research partner, list out their roles. Moving on to tab 4, materials. If you are going to procure materials or supplies under the contract, list them out here. You will need to specify a vendor, a quantity, cost, whether it is exclusive for this contract, whether it was competitively sourced, whether it's consumable, and if you have any supporting documentation. Supporting documentation can be something as simple as a screenshot from a vendor or supplier's website showing the cost. If you say no to supporting documents, you will be asked to provide a free text answer justification. You can say something like supporting documentation available upon request. Tab 5 is for subcontractor information. If you are proposing subs, you will need the following information from them. Contact information for the person responsible for the subcontract budget, a letter of commitment from the subcontractor, and the sub's budget breakdown. Subcontractors are different from your research partner, so make sure you don't enter the cost information for your research institute twice. If you aren't proposing subcontractors, skip this section. Tab 6 is for the Research Institute partner information. DSIP will automatically calculate the labor split between the Research Institute or the RI and you, the prime contractor. So keep in mind that the RI must complete at least 30% of the proposed work. That must be reflected in the hours you enter in the cost volume, or you will not be able to certify and submit the proposal. To complete this section, you will need a contact for the budget from the Research Institute. This may or may not be the research partner. You also need a letter of commitment signed by the Research Institute. It is possible to submit without a commitment letter, but your proposal may not be evaluated. You will be asked if you can provide details for the budget breakdown from the RI. Most universities will provide this breakdown with G&A, fringe, and various overhead fees broken out. If you have that, enter that information here. If not, you will need to work from a fully burdened lump sum budget from your RI. We recommend sending your research partner a copy of this Excel tab early in your proposal process. If they provide the details in the necessary DSIP format, it will minimize back and forth and unnecessary data entry for you later on. Names and roles for direct labor will auto-populate from tab 3. If you have detailed budget information for your research partners, you will need to enter the hourly rates for each of them. To justify hourly rates, you need to show that it falls within the standard rates per GSA. To do that, go to the linked GSA website and search for the job title. GSA will provide hourly data for that role and a standard deviation low and standard deviation high. For each role, copy those numbers over into columns H, I, and J. If your hourly rates fall below the low-end average or high-end average noted in GSA, you will likely need to provide justification for those rates. The federal government does this to make sure you aren't paying ridiculously high salaries or hardly paying people at all. For hourly labor, select which organization they belong to, which for this tab is defaulted to RI. If you have fringe or overhead rates, enter that information into lines 17 and 18. If you are using fully burdened rates, leave it at 0. If your RI is proposing procuring materials for the contract, enter those details here just like you did for your company. Then we have the travel section. Some phase 1s, like NASA's, don't allow the prime contractor, subs, or research partners to propose travel. So check the broad agency announcement or BAA for your topic before you propose travel. To justify travel costs, enter the airport code from your point of origin and the destination. Enter the number of days and number of travelers. For airfare, indicate the airline in line 35 and provide an average commercial ticket cost. For lodging and meals and incidental expenses, or M&I, you will need to reference the allowed GSA rates for your destination. Click the link and say we're going to Los Angeles to visit Edwards Air Force Base. We would be allowed to expense $86 a day for meals and incidentals and $65.50 for travel days. That's the first and last day. So we would enter that information into line 37. For car rental, reference the rental company in line 35 and provide an average daily cost based on your preferred car rental company. Repeat this for each trip you are proposing and enter the overhead rate in line 44 if you aren't using fully burdened rates. In the summary section, enter the G&A if you have been provided one. If not, leave it blank. Profit will auto-populate from tab 2. Tab 7 is the actual cost breakdown and where everything comes together. Names and roles for direct labor will auto-populate from tab 3. For each person, you will need to enter their hourly rate and how many hours they will spend on the project. To justify hourly rate, you need to show that it falls within the standards per GSA rates. To do that, again, go to the linked GSA website and search for the job title and copy over the standard deviation low, average, and high. These go into columns H, I, and J on this tab. If your hourly rates fall below the low end of average or the high end average, as noted in GSA, again, you will need to justify those rates. Finally, for labor, select whether the person is working for you, the prime contractor, or a subcontractor. If you have fringe or overhead rates, enter that information in lines 19 and 20. If you are using fully burdened rates, leave it at 0. Direct materials will auto-populate from tab 4. All you have to do is indicate if you are applying an overhead rate. If not, leave it blank. Then we move on to the travel section. Just like you did for your research partner, complete this section using commercial quotes and GSA rates. Remember, some phase 1s, like NASA's, don't allow travel, so check the BAA before you propose any. In the summary section, again, enter that G&A if you have one. If not, leave it blank. Profit will auto-populate from tab 2. Research Institute total cost will auto-populate from tab 6. Now you have all the information and justifications to enter an approved and winning cost volume into the submission portal. Before you close out, be sure to fill out the header information in rows 1 and 2, and then export the cost tab as a PDF and upload it into volume 5 as your additional cost information to make things really easy for your reviewer. If you have any questions, please let us know so we can keep improving these walkthroughs, and good luck on your proposals.